All right, today on The Explainer, we are diving into the strategic roadmap for what could be one of the most ambitious turnarounds in recent NFL history. So let's set the stage. The 2025 season ends, and the Tennessee Titans are just a disaster. A 1-11 record. I mean, we're talking rock bottom. This wasn't just a bad season, it was a total systemic failure. But here's the crazy part. What if that total collapse is actually the start of an amazing comeback story? You know, sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way you can build a solid foundation for something huge. So how are they going to do it? Let's get into the plan. Okay, so before we can even talk about the rebuild, we've got to understand just how bad things got. We're basically doing an autopsy on that 2025 season because this failure, man, it was so much more than just a bad record. And yeah, the numbers, they don't lie. They paint a really ugly picture. I mean, just look at their league rankings here. The offense, dead last. The defense, couldn't stop a nosebleed. To put it simply, they couldn't score, and they couldn't stop anyone else from scoring. So why were the stats so bad? Well, a big part of it was just pure chaos. You had the head coach Brian Callahan getting fired mid-season after a rough 1-5 start. Then his replacement, Mike McCoy, comes in and, yeah, he couldn't stop the bleeding either. It just looked like a total mess from the outside. And that chaos, it wasn't just behind the scenes. The frustration started spilling out into the open. After this just awful 25-3 loss to Jacksonville, you had players going to the media, openly ripping into the coaches for their conservative play calling. I mean, you can see it in this quote right here. The locker room was completely broken. And who's caught right in the middle of this whole dumpster fire? The rookie quarterback, Cam Ward. The guy was just under constant attack, a sack rate of over 10%. That is just insane. It's completely unsustainable. He was literally running for his life on every single play. No rookie, I don't care who you are, can succeed in that kind of situation.
Okay, so everything was a disaster. Total wreckage. But, and this is a big but, out of all that chaos, the Titans actually came away with this incredibly rare and powerful set of tools. That complete collapse, it accidentally created the perfect opportunity for a rebuild.
They ended up with what this report calls a trifecta of leverage. Think about this combo. 1, the #1 overall pick in the draft. 2, more money to spend than any other team in the entire league. And 3, a young, promising quarterback who's still on his cheap rookie deal. That is the holy trinity of a rebuild. And let's just put that financial power into perspective for a second. Look at this. Over $120 million in cap space. That's more cash to throw around than anyone else in the NFL. We're not talking about just plugging a few holes here. This is a full-scale demolition and rebuild, and they've got a massive war chest to fund the whole thing. But here's the thing, right? Having all that money and all those draft picks is great, but it means nothing if you don't have the right people making the decisions. You need the right architects to actually build the thing.
And that brings us to the new architect of this whole operation, General Manager Mike Borgonzi. Now, this guy comes from the Kansas City Chiefs, you know, that little dynasty they've got going on. And he brings their philosophy with him, a really disciplined draft and develop culture. So the idea isn't to just spend like crazy, but to build a team that can win for years to come.
So job #1 for Borgonzi, hiring a new head coach. And the mission is crystal clear. Everything has to be about developing Cam Ward. The thinking here points directly to an offensive mastermind. We're talking about someone like Ben Johnson, the guy behind that high-flying Detroit offense. Or maybe Cliff Kingsbury, who's known for being a real quarterback guru. Okay, so you've got the new leadership team in place. What's next? Well, now it's time to open up that massive war chest and go shopping. The goal isn't just to fill a few holes. It's to buy an entirely new foundation for this team. And the spending strategy is simple but brilliant. Be aggressive, but be smart. They're going to pour most of that money into 3 critical spots. First, protect your quarterback at all costs. Second, get that quarterback a legit #1 weapon to throw to. And third, you gotta fix the defense by adding a guy who can get after the other team's QB. So who are they targeting? We're talking about proven, big-time players right in the middle of their prime. Think guys like Braden Smith at right tackle, one of the best pass protectors in the game. Or George Pickens, a young, physical receiver who can really grow alongside Cam Ward. And on defense, you go get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, an edge rusher who just guarantees you pressure year in and year out. All right, so you've spent the money in free agency, you've plugged the big holes. Now all eyes turn to the draft. And this is where things get really interesting because they have the single most valuable pick, #1 overall. But it's a weak year for quarterbacks. So what do you do? Well, the answer is actually pretty clear. You've already got your young QB in Cam Ward, and there isn't a can't-miss prospect at that position this year. So the absolute smartest play is to trade that #1 pick. Find a team that's desperate, trade down, and collect a whole bunch of extra assets. It's all about maximizing the value of that pick. So what does a trade like that actually look like? Well, a realistic scenario would be them moving down, say, to pick #7 this year. But in return, they'd get a high second-round pick for this draft, and this is the big prize, an extra first-round pick for next year. See, it's not about winning this one draft. It's about setting yourself up for the long haul. And that's the thing you have to understand. None of this is random. Every single one of these moves is part of a very specific multi-year plan. And it all leads up to one massive moment, the grand opening of their brand new state-of-the-art stadium. And here's what that roadmap looks like. It's a 3-year timeline. Year 1, 2026, that's the bridge season. The goal is just to be competitive, make the playoffs maybe, and really set the new culture. Then you get to 2027. That's the contention season. You open the new stadium, and you're not just hoping to be good, you are expecting to be a legitimate title contender. And that leads to 2028, when the Super Bowl window is officially wide open. So when you put it all together, here's what you should take away. The Titans have the money, they have the picks, and they have a meticulous plan for one of the most incredible worst-to-first turnarounds we've ever seen. The blueprint is perfect. But, things that look perfect on paper don't always work out in the real world, which leaves us with just one massive question. Can they actually pull it off?